regard to Mr. Libby's case, please note that his 5 counts of obstruction and false statement and perjury revolve around 3 conversations that he had. Mr. Rita was only brought before the grand jury once, Mr. Libby 4 times. Mr. Rita went to trial and was convicted on all 5 counts. His trial counsel filed a motion for a reduced sentence. At sentencing, counsel presented evidence, and Mr. Rita was sentenced to 33 months. Mr. Libby also went to trial and was convicted of 4 of the 5 charges against him. He filed sentencing memoranda requesting a sentence of probation. The court sentenced him to 30 months, 2 years of supervision, and a $250,000. Both men, Rita and Libby, were federally indicted on counts of making false statements under oath, perjury, and obstruction of justice. Both were convicted by a jury. Both men were sentenced to over 2 years of imprisonment, Mr. Rita for 33 months and Mr. Libby for 30 months. Both men have extensive civil service backgrounds, are dedicated family men, and have been subjected to a harsh sentence based in part on allegations never presented to the jury. Despite all of these similarities, today Mr. Rita is in prison. Mr. Rita is a 59-year-old man who spent the better part of his life in public service. Like Mr. Libby, who has received various awards for his service, Mr. Rita has accumulated over 35 medals, awards, and commendations for his military service. All told, Mr. Rita retired with more than 32 years of service to the federal government. Like Mr. Libby, whose attorneys described him in their sentencing memorandum as a dedicated family man, Mr. Rita is also devoted to his family. He describes himself as a family man, having helped raise his 2 sons. Despite these similarities, Mr. Rita's personal background is very different from Mr. Libby's in many respects. While Mr. Libby is a law school graduate, Mr. Rita had a troubled youth and had to grow up partly on his own. He dropped out of high school. He did obtain his GED and later completed an Associate of Arts degree while working for then the INS. As a result, Mr. Rita is not of the same means as Mr. Incredibly, the President's justification for commuting Mr. Libby's sentence mirrored Mr. Rita's arguments before the Supreme Court. However, when Mr. Rita appeared before the court this past February, the President's Solicitor General took the opposite position and argued that uniformity in sentencing trumped Mr. Rita's justification. The President's actions placed his absolute constitutional pardoning power at odds with his own Solicitor General's successful argument before the Supreme Court. I spoke by telephone with Mr. Rita this past Monday. He had one question that he asked that I posed to this committee. How can the executive branch argue that my reasons for seeking a lower sentence before the Supreme Court were wrong, and then use my same reasons for a lower sentence to justify wiping out Mr. Libby's prison time?